Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Research Aromatica webinar. I'm very excited for the content that we're going to show you today and for what we've got prepared. As an introduction, we are going to be hearing from one of the world experts in sandalwood, from Dr. Dhanushka Hettiarachchi. I know him more as Danny. I think most people know him as Danny, and so I'll refer to him throughout the presentation as Danny, a good friend of mine. And an introduction to Danny. He is a natural product chemist, and he specializes in essential oils and plant lipids with over 15 years of experience in the sandalwood industry. He is currently the product manager at Quintus, Australia, the largest sandalwood grower and distiller in the world. Prior to his current role, he was a private consultant for sandalwood and agarwood. He commenced his sandalwood journey at Westcourt Group as a research scientist, working on Australian and Pacific sandalwood varieties. Danny is an adjunct academic at Edith Cowan University at the University of Western Australia in Siri, Jayawed Panaku University. He holds a doctorate of philosophy and master of pharmacognosy degree from Current University Australia, with a bachelor's of pharmaceutical science from Siri Ramachandra University, India, and is a chartered chemist of the Royal Australian Chemical Institute. He is a member of the Technical Committee of the Australian Society of Cosmetic Chemists and International Standards Organization Committee on Essential Oils. Since 2013, he has served as the expert witness on sandalwood for the state of Western Australia. Danny and I have communicated for a number of years now. I've known him for about 6 years, and I've learned a great deal from him in his field of expertise on sandalwood and agarwood as well. Today's focus will be on sandalwood. We're going to go ahead and start the presentation that Danny has here. Feel free to ask questions, and we'll answer them either at the end, or we can do a Q&A live, but Danny may jump in and answer questions in the comments too. But we're going to go ahead and start the presentation at this time.
Thank you, Aaron. As Aaron introduced, I'm Danny Hettiarachchi, or you can call me from my actual name, Dhanushka. And today I'm going to talk about sandalwood as we know it. Sandalwood is something which I really love to talk about. So let me take you through the journey which I'm going through for past 15 years very happily. So the structure of the presentation for today is first I will give you an introduction to sandalwood and then discuss about the global distribution and the global industry with specific to the different species of sandalwood, and also discuss about the chemistry of sandalwood, which is my expertise, and also the fragrance properties of sandalwood, which sandalwood is known as a fragrance ingredient, and also pharmacological properties of sandalwood, which I believe as the future of sandalwood, and also the safety, toxicity, and the substitutes used as sandalwood, and also the most important part, the conservation and the sustainability issues around it. Sandalwood is among one of the most expensive natural materials in the world. So it could be as cheap as $15 or $5 a kilo based upon the origin of all the species, and it could even fetch up to $150 a kilo, again based on the quality and the origin. So it is only the hardwood of the tree has the aroma. So if you smell the leaves or the bark or fruits, flowers, nothing has the sandalwood aroma. It's only the hardwood of the tree has this aroma. So it's known to the human history for a very long time, since people could write and record stories. Sandalwood is recorded in the Asian cultures. There are numerous ancient texts and traditions where sandalwood is revered, and it is known as chandan in Indian subcontinent and the South Asian region, and also santal, which is a diversion of chandan in Arabic, which has moved to the European languages, and also as tangxiang in Chinese. So what you see here, the first picture is an incense, which is very famous use of sandalwood, sandalwood incense, and also sandalwood powders, paste, which is made for religious purpose as well as for beautification. On your right hand side, you have funeral pyre in the Indian subcontinent, mostly in the Hindu tradition. When a person passes away, body is cremated, they prefer to uh, have at least one piece of sandalwood to be burned together with the body for uh, as a religious belief. And also on your left hand side bottom, you could see the essential oil perfumes. These are traditional perfumes which has been used for a very long time. So we'll discuss about these things in detail. First record of sandalwood as white sandalwood, or the Shweta Chandan, is found in Charaka Samhita, which is one of the oldest materia medicas, or the medical texts in Sanskrit language in India, 400 BC. And also there's mentioning of sandalwood as a taxation commodity in Arthashastra, which is one of the economic treatises by Kautilya. So the cosmetic and perfumery use is recorded in number of compendiums in the ancient Indian culture, as well as Arabic and Chinese cultures as well. It is used as a perfume, it is used as a cosmetic, and it is mentioned in numerous poems and songs as a pure and an aromatic ingredient. It is traditionally known as an ingredient from southern parts of India. So, as the Southeast Asian islands are known as the Spice Islands, the southern India is known for its sandalwood, and it has always been an exporting commodity to Roman Empire, Egypt, and especially to the Arabian region. And also especially to China. But the Chinese buyers used to buy through the inland routes, and it has been one of the most revered product used by the imported by the Chinese. So with the colonization, European colonization in the 17th century, they found more sandalwood, or different types of sandalwood are found in Pacific Islands and in Australia. So then the sandalwood boom, as we call it now, has started importing, exporting all these products to China, and China has become the biggest consumer of sandalwood, and also later sandalwood used in the European perfume industry, and the ever expanding Gulf or the Arabian countries started using sandalwood from these different sources. So the photos, what we see, the top center photo is taken from an online resource. That is the Honolulu in those days, where the sandalwood trade has been heavily handled by the American sailors under the supervision of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And also the bottom right hand photo is a very famous book written on South Pacific sandalwood trade and how it has affected the geopolitics of this region because of sandalwood, by Dorothy Schinberg. On left hand side, what you see is Fremantle, or the Western Australia's dockyards in early 19th century, where mountains of sandalwood collected from the semi-arid wheat growing region and shipped to China as well as to India. The botanical definition of sandalwood is really vague, because sandalwood is found in different parts of the world, which I'll discuss later. Sandalwood grows in a very arid region, almost like a desert type of region in Australia, as well as cloud forests in India, Sri Lanka, and in Pacific Islands, especially in Hawaii. So there are different species. They have different botanical definitions. What we see on the top are the flowers, which are very different, and the leaves of Santalum spicatum, which is the Western Australian variety, as well as Santalum album, the Indian variety. Sandalwood flowers, they don't have any smell, as I said before, but the Western Australian sandalwood has a slight smell of carrion, or the dead animal type of a smell, because it gets pollinated through the flies, not through butterflies or bees. Sandalwood is a hemiparasite tree. Its roots go and find the root system of another host tree. As you could see, the nursery plant being displayed here has got the roots of the pot host sitting here, has been connected to the sandalwood roots through a system called hosteria, where sandalwood heavily dependent upon the nitrogen from these trees. Sandalwood fruit is a drupe. It has a fleshy skin, which is, in some cases, it's edible for birds. And in the one of the desert varieties, even humans consume this fruit part of it. And then you have a hard shell or a soft shell based on the species, and then a very oil-rich kernel, which is another topic for another day. The oil of this kernel. Taxonomy. Sandalwood belongs to the family, genus Santalum of the family Santalaceae. So there are about 17 different species, and also related species like Osiris lanceolata, Osiris alba, which is in the same Santalaceae family. And the genetic studies of these species have been studied and identified the phylogeny tree, as you could see here, as published by Dhanushka Harvard and Professor Valverde. So Osiris lanceolata from Africa is a substitute for sandalwood, but but it has some sandalwood compounds giving a sandalwood type aroma, similar compounds. And there's another species called Buddha wood, which is Aromaphila micheli. It's from Eastern Australia, eastern states of Australia, which is a substitute for sandalwood, especially with the carving industry. But it has a separate essential oil of its own, and it's very nice essential oil. But it is used in the carving industry, and it is considered for carving statues and religious items. It is a substitute for sandalwood. Red sandalwood is another species. Many people get confused between that. That's what I've included it here. It's actually a Fabaceae family tree called Pterocarpus santalis, which is non-aromatic, but it has a very nice red dye to this timber, which can be extracted by same like preparing paste. So it is used in medicine and wood carving in Asia a lot. So red sandalwood has nothing to do with the Santalum family. Because of the similar medicinal uses, it is used, both are called as sandalwood or chandan in India. Now the most important part, the distribution. So if you could see, the majority of the sandalwood is found in the Australia and the Pacific region. So Australia has around 6 different species. 3 of them have been arid varieties, and the others been tropical, and rest of the sandalwood trees are very, very tropical. So the most common one, as we know, is the most well-known one, I would say, is Santalum album, which you can see in South India, Sri Lanka, and in the Nusa Tenggara region of Indonesia and East Timor-Leste, the East Timor Island. And also you have Santalum magrogeri found in Papua New Guinea. And some of the extinct species, like if you can see in the number 17, Santalum fernandesianum, it is found in the Juan Fernandez Islands, belongs to Chile. That is the furthest towards the east, towards the west, and towards the north, the highest we can find in the Bonin Islands belongs to Japan. And Hawaii has got four different species of sandalwood, found. So sandalwood distribution is really fascinating. And all these species are having a different character, and some of them doesn't contain any aromatic heartwood. So if you see the commercial species, these are the 7 species which we commonly use as the sandalwood for medicinal or aromatic carving or religious purposes. So Santalum album from southern India is considered as the top commercial product. So with a high commercial value, you can see Santalum album coming from southern India is regarded in the market for oil or for wood purpose. The Santalum album coming from Sri Lanka and Nusa Tenggara region of Indonesia. I didn't include Timor-Leste here because of the legal restrictions kept, and it is reported that it is not been exported from Timor-Leste. So these are the second grade of Santalum album sold in internationally for oil as well as carving. And also for incense. Santalum album in Australia is introduced species. It is planted in large numbers, which I'll come and explain to you a bit later. So Santalum yasi found in Fiji and Tonga are much closer to Santalum album and highly valued, but very rare commodity. Santalum paniculatum from Hawaii is another source which has a huge potential to become a sustainable supply of sandalwood in future. Santalum austrocaledonicum, same, it's from Vanuatu as well as New Caledonia, belongs to France. So they produce a unique aroma sandalwood variety which is used in perfumes, mouth fresheners, and even in incense. Same with Papua New Guinea. And at the 6th position is my favorite Santalum spicatum from Western Australia, which I've spent nearly 12 years of my life studying and working with this wonderful plant. Santalum spicatum, the aroma-wise, it has a less appeal than sandalwood, because when you see from benchmark scent for Santalum album, it may be different, but Santalum spicatum has its own aroma, which is an added extra woody, earthy aroma to sandalwood, and it has its uniqueness to that aroma, which can be used mainly in masculine type perfumes, in my view. And also, because of the scarcity, Western Australian sandalwood is the largest source of sandalwood at this stage, exporting around 2,000 to 3,000 tons a year. And the last is Santalum lanceolatum, excellent log for carving, less like low in aroma, but it is an excellent log for wood carving and religious articles found in the northern Australia. I'll discuss these 3 main species for commercial value. Santalum Indian sandalwood or Santalum album. It is also known as the Mysore sandalwood because it is historically sourced from the eastward kingdom of Mysore. So there's a lot of things, lot of heroes, villains in this story, because first the sandalwood sales were regulated early as 3rd century BC. And in 1792, the gentleman seen in the first photo is Tipu Sultan, who's the Sultan of Mysore, who has called sandalwood as the royal tree, and any tree grows even in a person's backyard belongs to the crown. So that rule didn't change for a very long time, even though India became a monarchy to a colony to and republic. Still, it remains a government. Sandalwood remained state property since 2002 when they changed the rules. So the scarcity of sandalwood and this control has opened up a big black market of sandalwood and widespread exploitation. So the gentleman in the right hand side photo is known as Veerappan. For some, he's a hero. For some, he's a villain. He is known as the biggest sandalwood smuggler. But in my view, the sandalwood smuggling which I've seen in Australia, European hasn't done even 1/4 of the sandalwood smuggling what the Australian sandalwood smugglers has done. So it is used a lot in day-to-day products, and this is one of the iconic products of India, the government soap factory, which uses natural sandalwood. If you go there or if you have any contacts, this is something which you can really try. I don't know how good it is as a soap, but it has natural sandalwood. So it is included in the IUCN Red List, and also plantations and sustainable studies have been happening for a very long time, and now since 2002 the green light has been given, so the plantations are going on full scale in India. These trees were sourced, these seeds were sourced from Mysore and brought to northern Australia in early 1990s, late 1980s, and the plantations have been set up in Australia. Santalum spicatum is the most important tree, as I told, for me personally, and also for the state of Western Australia. So this is the state which I come from, and if you see the city here, Perth is in my view is the center for sandalwood, because most of the sandalwood in the world is being exported or processed or managed somehow in a company or an organization based in Perth. So I would call Perth as the center of sandalwood. And also Western Australia is a huge state. It's like it's larger than the Western Europe altogether. So the most of the state, I would say 2/3 of the state has got sandalwood vastly spread in this arid and semi-arid area. So the yellow for this photo I've taken from the State Forest Products Commission. So the yellow part here, as the size of France, I would say, is the current harvesting area. So the harvesting areas change, keeping a sustainable practice. So in 1843, sandalwood was identified accidentally in Western Australia. By that time, it was called as the Swan River Colony. British were not very sure whether to keep this part of Australia, because there's no economical value for that state. So when sandalwood was found, that was the first income, and that was the only reason for British to form Western Australia as a state. So it has played a huge role in Western Australia history, and Western Australia owes a lot for sandalwood, Santalum spicatum tree. Because of the high exploitation in 1929, Western Australian state has made sandalwood a royal tree, making it as a crown property. So until 2019, things will change, and the handling of the Biodiversity Act has replaced protecting the species in a better way. FUC sandalwood has played a huge role in rural Australia's history. The center photo, which if you can see clearly, it's a camel caravan carrying sandalwood, and also old sailing ships shipping sandalwood in late 1800s. And also I've taken a photo which is courtesy of the South Australian state, giving a bit of credit to our neighboring state, who also hosts some sandalwood. Western Australia, Santalum spicatum supplies around 50 to 60% of the world's sandalwood demand, which is currently declining because the harvesting quotas have been reduced, as well as it's a completely state operated harvesting system, which I'll discuss a bit later. And also the private and government state sector plantations have started for the sustainable supply of Western Australian sandalwood. The other variety is Santalum austrocaledonicum, which because most of the Australian foresters who worked in this region would like to call it like Coral Sea Sandalwood, because that's a Coral Sea region. So if I'm not making any offense, but to the Vanuatu and people of Vanuatu and people of New Caledonia, but to put rather than putting is Vanuatu and New Caledonian sandalwood, it's much better to keep it like Coral Sea sandalwood, much more exotic as well. So it's the third most utilized species of sandalwood, and it, as I said, it originates from Vanuatu and New Caledonia. It is introduced to Asian markets in the 19th century as a substitute of Santalum album, but it has a distinct aroma, a very nice aroma, which is different to Santalum spicatum or album, so it has found its own market, especially in the perfume industry. Because it has been exploited as well, so there are very good reforestation programs in Vanuatu, together with the Australian government, which is currently in place. The other species is the Hawaiian sandalwood, Sandalwood paniculatum, which is found in the Hawaii island, the Big Island, which has played a huge role in Hawaii's history, because most of the American sailing ship, the trading ships, used to go and buy sandalwood from Hawaii and take it to be sold in China. And the Hawaiian kingdom has put a tax on people that they have to pay it in sandalwood. So the bottom left-hand side photo, what you see is a pit dug in the shape of a ship's hull, so that people bring their sandalwood and then it is filled and being informed that, okay, a shipload is ready in that way. So we don't know how many shiploads have been shipped in that time, but which made the Hawaii state, Hawaii kingdom, bankrupt and become part of United States. Currently, because of this overexploitation, most of sandalwood has been wiped out from its native land. So now very effective regeneration program as well as sustainable harvesting program is on its way. Sandalwood oil, that's the essential oil distilled from the or extracted from the sandalwood heartwood, which we all simply call as the sandalwood oil. And most of your perfumes, even certain flavored drinks, what you drink, contain a bit of sandalwood oil because it's a flavor enhancing agent. There's a unique order for sandalwood which comes from two main ingredients, alpha santalol and beta santalol. So if you see the diagram here, you can see the alpha santalol as well as beta santalol here, the center image, center top, and the left hand side. These are the two isomers of the santalol, which imparts different olfactory sensation in the nose. So close to 200 compounds have been identified in sandalwood species, but it depends upon the species and the origin and all other different factors. But among them, nearly 70 of them are reoccurring and could be quantified and reported. But we generally report around 25 main compounds, and the standards, international standards, have placed international standards have Indian as well as Australian sandalwood. International standards are available for Indian and Australian sandalwood, and the key compounds listed there are only 8 compounds for Western Australian sandalwood, and 2 only alpha and beta santalol content for Indian sandalwood. So all the other sandalwood species try to match or to be in par with the Indian sandalwood. I put the chemical composition here with the standard for the ones which are available for the 4 main species which are harvested commission. So the alpha santalol content given in the ISO is 15 to 25 for Western Australian sandalwood, but the resource you can find as low as 2, as high as 48. So many of them won't agree when I say I've seen trees which are having alpha santalol level as 48, but it's very rare. So what we have to understand is it's a natural product. trees have multiple factors affecting their growth and hardwood chemistry. So we can't say that Western, or we can make 48% alpha santalol product in Western Australia. It is always a blend, so we have to blend and mix it to the to comply with the standard. The same with the Indian sandalwood. Sometimes you see very high, but the variations what is seen for Indian sandalwood is very less. A huge variation again for the coral sea sandalwood as well as for Hawaiian sandalwood. So, as I said, even with the other compounds, you see this variation. And some of the unique compounds, if you see here, uh, this trans farnesol is seen only in Western Australian sandalwood. All the other sandalwood species, it's less than 1%. So this is a unique identifier or marker for Western Australian sandalwood. Same with the curcuminols. The curcuminols are in a variation, and you can easily identify the original species based on this compound. These are the only uh, major compounds I've listed here, but there are the 21 compounds which we usually use to match the chemotaxonomy of the species. So if you have any questions about this, we can come to this slide later and discuss. Biosynthesis of sandalwood. This is something, it's between a chemist like me and a biologist have to work. So there's a lot of work done on this part by Johns and Monadis here in Western Australia, and also a lot of teams in India, academic as well as industrial. The government researchers in India has done a lot of work on this. So as I presented here, some work from Srivastava is the sandalwood biosynthesis. So sandalwood follows a simple malonate pathway and form farnesyl pyrophosphate, and then it is santalin synthase enzyme, which is unique for sandalwood, which convert this farnesyl pyrophosphate into santalol family compound. So based on the enzyme, the genetics which determine this enzyme synthesis, as well as the other factors affecting the enzyme activity, all affect the formation of santalols or the high quality, which cause the high quality in sandalwood. So the genetics and this biosynthetic pathway is very important for sandalwood. And also there's another pathway which takes another parallel pathway which use the farnesyl pyrophosphate, what we see here, convert to a different group of enzymes and form other aromatic and similar sesquiterpenes. Farnesol, which is found in Sandalwood spicatum, is actually converting farnesyl pyrophosphate unreacted ones formed into farnesol and farnesene, and then it get oxidized into farnesol, which is almost seen as a byproduct of this biosynthetic path. Chemical analysis, which is the quality and everything what we discuss here is based on the chemical analysis. So usually the gas chromatography is used as the method of choice, as in other essential oils, and also a flame ionization detector. If you already know the compounds, if you have set your retention indices, you can use. And also, if not, you can use a mass selective detector. Advanced techniques such as Orbitrap or time of flight mass spectroscopy, like tandem mass spectroscopy, can study the minor metabolites, and which has led to this identification of biosynthetic pathways as well as oxidation products. International standards, as we discussed before, for Indian and Australian sandalwood, it includes the gas chromatography method with physicochemical methods such as optical rotation, refractive index, density, solubility, and acid and ester value. These are really important because some of the sandalwood buyers completely rely on the physicochemical methods, not on the gas chromatographic analysis. So sometimes it makes sense, because if someone has mixed a non-volatile matter, something like a coconut oil or any other petroleum oil, that wouldn't be easily detected on GC until you do a breakdown analysis or pyrolysis type of analysis. But so it is much easy, and in before you put something like that to GC, you can easily find these adulterations through these physicochemical methods. In recent times, there's a lot of talk about high performance thin layer chromatography, which I had the opportunity to work on, and I find it as a very good tool for identifying, especially the adulterations and also certain variations in sandalwood in intra species, intra-species variations, and also differentiating between the wild and the plantation trees. It's highly useful. And also something which we have to understand is the Chinese pharmacopoeia, where they specify sandalwood as a medicine, prescribe the HPTLC analysis rather than the GC analysis for its identification. In recent times, British Herbal Pharmacopoeia as well as USP has included HPTLC as a qualitative analytical method for sandalwood. These are the two typical gas chromatograms which I put for Santalum album as well as Santalum spicatum. So if you could see the Santalum album chromatogram is very neat. It has got only a few compounds. In the center, you can see the Santalol family compounds, and then the sesquiterpene hydrocarbons, which are the unoxidized version of the same. So it's like a mirror image here, what you see. But when you see the Santalum spicatum, which is very complex, you have alpha santalol, beta santalol, but you have again farnesol, luciferols, curcuminols, and you have some monoterpenes coming in as well. So this makes Santalum spicatum a very complex mix, a complex natural mix which has its unique aroma. So Santalum album has the typical sandalwood aroma, which we used for centuries. But when you smell Santalum spicatum, it's very complex. You have sandalwood there, but you get other notes in as well, which you can easily see in this chromatogram. These are the high performance thin layer chromatography studies, which is done by my colleague Olfactory in his PhD thesis. So I wouldn't be discussing. I haven't put much information into here because it's pending publication. So if you see a derivatized HPTLC plate has is a very good method to identify. These images are not the best which I put here, because I didn't put the more high resolution images which are supposed to go to the pending a publication. But what you could see is, like when we compare with the bisoprolol standard, you can see the separations of alpha santalol and beta santalol here, what you could see clearly. And it is, I wouldn't say at this stage it is as qualitative as GC, but definitely there's a future using this method, which is an easy method and a very visual method. So you can use this data for an expert as well as someone who just want to differentiate sandalwood or check for adulteration in a much more cheap and in a faster way. Distillation of sandalwood is the main industrial process in sandalwood industry. So before I go to the more advanced distillers, what is given in the top image, I'll go for the traditional distillation methods used in India, which is in some case, usually they don't use it for sandalwood anymore, but this is used for making many other traditional essential oils still in India. It's called the Genbaka system, which is a very traditional system and very traditional system of cooling, collecting the oil. But the aromas which is created from that for centuries are not changed. So I don't know in future how it will be, but while they could still do it, it's better to follow these methods in my view. So distillation of sandalwood, these are large scale distillations. What we do, in Western Australia as well as in some parts of India. Um, these are like at least 1 ton of wood is packed into a distillation still, and the steam is passed through this this packed bed of sandalwood. Particle size of the sandalwood, packing, and the raw material origin, everything matters, and the steam pressure, steam flow, everything matters in the oil quality. And then the steam is condensed. If you can see the large condensers given here, it is condensed and the water and oil is separated that way. After separating oil, also there's a lot of work to be done because the distillation process creates certain artifacts. Certain artifacts are needed for the quality of oil, and certain things are not needed. So there are solvent extractions as well as supercritical carbon dioxide extracts used in sandalwood industry, but you can't compare to the steam distilled original product. Olfactory properties. So I'm just taking it very in a basic level because I'm not a perfumer. I'm not qualified to give these. These are based on certain online resources which I've seen, and also with few communications with perfumers. So what we understand is beta santalol is the principal component which gives the sandalwood aroma. So the woody sweet aroma, as we simply call it, it comes actually from the beta santalol. So it has a medicinal woody type of aroma. Alpha santalol, which is the main compound, and we all set our standards based on the alpha santalol like as the key compound, which has a very strong woody aroma and an animalistic aroma, which is a bit like a urine type of smell, which may sound bad, but when in a mix, you won't find it that offensive. So there are so many other ingredients that when you see this list of compounds and the olfactory notes, you'll understand when a sandalwood has more of these compounds, how it differs, how it adds into the total aromatic profile of this product. So wood and powders are used. Still, the largest utilization method is the wood and powders in incense and carving. Of course, the oils are used a lot, but the volume-wise, most of the wood is still used more for, especially in Asia. So in India, there's a really old but very specific categorizing method, which includes from very high certain logs which we can't even think of procuring, but from that to any grade of wood what you can expect from a tree. So this is a very good classification. Many of them are calling to repeal it and go for a much simpler method what is used in Australia and Pacific, like roots, buds, and larger logs. But I'm in support of a very detailed classification method, because then you can actually grade it according to different market needs. And also Chinese pharmacopoeia, one of the Chinese traditional medicine, is one of the largest consumers of sandalwood. They have a very detailed explanation on how it should be used. And all these logs and pieces have different aroma qualities. So a detailed identification of wood and powder is needed. Traditional applications are again starts with medicine. It is a traditional medicine, and also it is used in cosmetics. So if you see the old Indian texts on perfumery and cosmetics, they all specify sandalwood in high regard, and every formula what is mentioned has got sandalwood as a compulsory ingredient. So there's a type of perfumes which is traditionally made in India and sold widely in in the Islamic world, called attar, or in when it comes for Turkish, you call it like otto. So these are the distilled essential oils. But as you know, when you distill floral matter, much of the aroma is water soluble, or the aroma principles or the essential oils are very difficult to collect. So there's an ancient way of collecting this by adding sandalwood oil to the collection pot, so that sandalwood oil will fix all the floral aromas which is getting distilled. So once it is done like that, that core distilled and collected to the sandalwood oil, that is called as attar. I think it's a very simple way of explaining an attar. I didn't do the justification. And also sandalwood plays a major role in flavoring in Indian and Eastern cultures. So it is used in mouth freshness a lot, and chewing tobacco to mask the harshness of the tobacco. Also, I put another photo of a book which covers the by James McHugh on Indian traditions and Indian philosophy on aroma, where it has a lot to talk about sandalwood. I think sandalwood is the most described or the discussed ingredient in that book. Incense plays a huge role for sandalwood market, as well as for the Asian traditions, Asian cultures. In China and Japan, incense play a huge role, even in India, both for prayer as well as for as a room freshener in some cases, and even in the Arabic world where they use Arabian bakhur. So Chinese joss sticks and Indian dhoop or havan type of burning is mostly for prayers, whereas Indian agarbatti or Arabian bakhur, so Japanese kodo, are more for aroma appreciation or getting aroma to your ambience is what is expected in these. So in both the traditions of using incense sticks, sandalwood plays a big role. And nowadays, unfortunately, most of the these products are being adulterated with a lot of synthetic products. So it is really unsafe to even burn them in a religious place. As we all know, sandalwood is highly sold for perfume. So I've put few of the well-known modern perfumes in the top and some traditional perfumes. So in the bottom, if you see from the left to right, it's like a common sandalwood oil with some florals incorporated to that, sold like this small 3 ml or what we call as a quarter tola bottles in India and in the Middle East region. And then you have very high quality, highly sourced, specialized sandalwood based afters in a very fancy, expensive packs, as well as what we call as a modern oriental perfumes. Like I put a photo from Ajmal, which is one of the leading companies in this trade, where they use the principles and the ingredients of the oriental perfumes, especially sandalwood, and then formulate them into a modern perfume base. And if you see, I put Santal 33, which is one of the most famous, I think, sandalwood type perfume in the United States, and also Chanel number 5, which contains both Santalum album and Santalum spicatum. From what I've heard, I can't confirm that. I think it's still a secret for that mix. And also some of the well-known sandalwood containing perfumes like Sandalwood Blush. Sandalwood is also used as a solubilizer for solid aromatic compounds like musk or ambergris or saffron, and it has this fixative property. So if your sandalwood is if your perfume is staying for long, if it is drying down good, that means it contains sandalwood and keeps that aroma while giving the sandalwood aroma. So the perfumery use, I would discuss the perfume pyramid, which is very traditional way of discussing perfumes, I would say. Uh, so while it's capturing all these things, all the other aromas, and sandalwood plays a very important role in perfumery as we discussed. So I'm discussing it in a very traditional way through a perfume pyramid. So sandalwood has a very green, lactonic, like milk type of a smell, not so creamy, and a sweet smell as its top note. Not so much greeny smell, but then you have a middle note of animalic, as I said before, like it's a bit like urine type of a smell, not a bad urine type of a smell, but that's a note which we can call it. And then it's a hay, like a dry grass hay type of a smell, um, which is very fresh yet dry type of a smell, which is the heart note of sandalwood. The most important part of sandalwood is its woody note, which is it's characterized for, which is woody. In case of certain Western Australian as well as Pacific sandalwood, it has an earthy incense type of smell as well. So in perfumery terms, it is considered as a oriental woody base note. So that's a fragrance family it belongs to. Sandalwood belongs to the oriental woody group. And Santalum album has a very typical sandalwood smell, as I've been telling before. Santalum spicatum has a mixed, very earthy, woody type of high woody and incense type of a perfume, like aroma. And then Santalum austrocaledonicum has this spicy. The top note is very spicy and less lactonic notes. But in combination, they give like same sandalwood coming from three different species, three different origins, which gives three different distinct aroma profiles. Sandalwood is highly regarded in aromatherapy. I know a lot of them don't use because of the origin. Many of the aromatherapists as well as the aromatherapy enthusiasts are concerned about the wild harvesting and the unethical practices. I'll come to that later, but I would say like sandalwood has been used as a calming burning of sandalwood oil. Sandalwood oil has been recorded for a very long time, and these recent studies have found that these effects are actually true. It has a calming. What they say about sandalwood is it increases the psychological activity and keep the mind aroused while it's calm. So very few essential oils or any other ingredients will do that, and I think it's proves that why this ingredient is considered as a one of the divine ingredients. So it's like meditation chemically. Safety and toxicity of sandalwood has been studied quite uh, elaborately. So it has been for the acute toxicity. And if you're using for cosmetic purpose, please don't consider these results because there are enough cell-based studies conducted for the safety, and also human studies conduct for the irritancy and um, sensitization. So what we have to see is like no skin irritation. So it is not an irritant at all, but certain compounds could cause sensitization. That is for certain people who have certain allergies for dermal allergies for molecules. In Santalum album, it's very less than 2.4 people have from a study shown any allergy for using while using Santalum album, Indian sandalwood. But Western Australian sandalwood unfortunately have this farnesol, which is actually smells really good. Farnesol is one of the very sweet molecules in aroma wise, but unfortunately it is an allergen. So some people uh, would develop, individuals would develop an allergy for farnesol. Regulatory compliance for sandalwood is, as we said, chemically it is regulated through the International Standards Organization, and the International Fragrance Association has kept certain requirements for sandalwood, especially for Western Australian sandalwood. So in case if it contains sandalwood, if the total formulation has more than 0.001% or 100 ppm in a leave-on product, it should be mentioned in the label that it contains farnesol. And rinse-off products, it's much less. So you have to mention it in the label. And also the European Commission has given a limit that different classes of IFRA and sorry, it's only the sorry, I'll tell it again. Now, IFRA standards has specified the usage limits for based on the different type of products, and in the maximum you can use 2% of farnesol in any type of product. So this is a great limitation factor for Western Australian sandalwood, even though unfortunately it smells really good. It has a uniqueness, but because of farnesol, its use in cosmetics and perfumes are limited. There are certain substitutes and adulterants. So fragrance scientists have been working on sandalwood for a very long time, because it's initially 1980s and 90s when it's understood it's going to be an illegal source and no more sandalwood is going to be available. They work tirelessly to develop these compounds. So some of them are really high chemical achievements, I would call, to compare to match the sandalwood aroma in a way. So what you see, the top left-hand side is sandalwood. It's the most well-known sandalwood substitute. It is a synthetic compound which gives the sandalwood type aroma, which is developed by Judan, and also polysantol in the bottom left-hand side is developed by Firmenich, which is a company working a lot on sandalwood, and it gives the aroma similar to beta-santalol. And there are other compounds like javanol, ebenol, ventrol, all have some sort of a sandalwood type of an aroma. In a recent development, Firmenich has reported a few months ago that and also followed by BSF, they too developed a biotechnological method. They identify the gene sequence which is producing the beta-santalol, and through introducing it to microorganism, they produce beta-santalol, which can be added to increase the sandalwood aroma in certain mixes. So it's currently available commercially, and that's the latest development in sandalwood chemistry wise. For someone who's working with the sandalwood industry, the plantation industry, and looking forward for sustainability of this plant, it is not a good news. But I think from a perfumer's point of view or a sustainability point of view, could be seen as a positive thing. But whatever the natural blend of the sandalwood aroma, what you get from alpha beta santalol mix and all the other compounds, all the nuances, what we see in sandalwood cannot be achieved by synthetic or biotechnologically produced products. So for another 1,000 or 2,000 years, up to how long the human kind is going to be on this earth, I think sandalwood, the actual sandalwood, would be produced in a tree planted on ground from any of these species, any of these beautiful species. Conservation. So illegal sandalwood harvesting around the world, Australia, India, Pacific Islands, Indonesia, it has deprived the world from this the nature, from this beautiful species. What we have to understand is sandalwood is not just for consuming the heartwood. It is a semi-parasitic tree. It plays a huge role in ecology. So you would wonder why I kept a photo for sandalwood conservation with a squirrel type creature here. This creature is called as a oiling. Woylie is a small marsupial squirrel found in the Western Australian semi-arid forest. So what Woylie does is that Woylie collects the Western Australian sandalwood seeds, try to crush them, but the things which get half crushed, Woylie digger, because it's a squirrel. Even though it's a marsupial in biologically, it works as a squirrel. So they dug small pits and bury the seeds. So they naturally get and the oil forgets where they have planted the seeds, and they get naturally germinated. So when the oilies were taken away from the ecosystem because of feral foxes and feral cats, sandalwood natural gene regeneration has stopped in parts of Western Australia, and reintroducing oily and the protection of oily has introduced. So this has given the idea for the Forest Products Commission of Western Australia that following this natural system to replant sandalwood in the arid region. So that operation is named under this small cute marsupial called Operation Oily, and the regeneration of sandalwood in Western Australia has been very successful. IUCN has categorized Santalum album as endangered species, so it restricts its importation exportation, and many countries have very strict control over. But sometimes this very strict control of a species creates problems of its own. So, as a best example is the initial Indian regulations saying that any sandalwood tree belongs to the government and you can't do anything with that. So people don't see any commercial value. So what we have to see, a great number of good people see commercial value in natural resources, and they want to take little and give a lot back to the nature. So we can't see everyone is an exploit of nature. We all like to take a little bit from the nature and give back. So if you restrict, if you put a red tape over it, that is not conservation. That is actually going to affect the species conservation. A very good example is there are a number of trees in Western Australia due to feral herbivorous animals which got completely vanished the face of this earth because there's no commercial interest for that trees. But the Western Australian government's initiative on Santalum spicatum as a commercial species has led to conservation of the species. And currently in India, it is happening successfully. Very glad to see in Sri Lanka it's happening, and even Pacific Islands. So the conservation should go hand to hand with the proper management. So I'm not a forester, but most of my forestry friends, my forest management friends, what they say is like conservation should be a type of a forest management. Then only when the people have interest on a species for any reason, whether it's attraction or a commercial utilization, that's the way to protect a species, which is happening for sandalwood successfully. Plantations. So in 1970s, India has worked on sandalwood with how to do this, how to get it back, because it's like it is growing in people's backyard. So whether we can use it like in a situation like that. I think in future, what I see in India is this wonderful programs conducted by some of my good friends there is introducing sandalwood more as a large scale plantation product. They introduce it as a home garden um, tree. So a farmer would have 5 to 10 trees in his garden, and in collectively that area would have millions of trees in that way. So it will be a very sustainable model if it works. So there's a lot of work done on that side. And in Western Australia, because of the land availability and the farming practices, we can't do it like that in Western Australia. So both Western Australian sandalwood and the large amount of uh, Indian sandalwood planted in the northern parts of Western Australia, which I'll discuss now, are done in a plantation in a model. So Western Australian sandalwood is covering around 12,000 hectares. Similarly, 12 to 15,000 hectares of Indian sandalwood is planted in the northern tropical parts of Western Australia, Northern Territory, and Queensland. So I'm currently working with Quintus, which is the largest sandalwood grower in the world. Around 12,000 hectares of sandalwood is planted by Quintus, previously known as Tropical Forestry Services, and large portion of it is in Western Australia. And there's a big team of forestry scientists working on nurseries, silviculture, plantation, and there's a lot of research happening in this project. So if you see, there are around 5 million sandalwood trees planted by Quintus, and some of them have been harvested at this stage. And also more trees would go. And other thing we have to understand is every sandalwood tree would have 2 host trees. So there's another 10 million trees which are not sandalwood are being planted because of this industry. Yeah, so Western Australia is the major forerunner in this sandalwood industry. But I would like, even though it is my industry and my my work, but I would like to see others, India, Pacific Islands, and Indonesia, Sri Lanka, joining this this growth, because there's a huge demand for sandalwood, which is currently catered by synthetic substitutes and other substitutes, not by real sandalwood. Sustainability is what I was leading to. So it should be things like Operation Oil is a huge success, and the IWSTs and State Forestry in India has done a lot of work. Same in Sri Lanka, it's universities and private sector working together to reintroduce sandalwood in Sri Lanka, in certain parts of Sri Lanka. Similar work is happening for Pacific Islands and Timor, especially in Hawaii. There's a lot of work happening. So the sustainability is not the sustainability in the forest or the forest management alone, because the processing, the whole supply chain of sandalwood until it is planted, the seed planted in on ground, until it goes to your touches your skin as a perfume or a cosmetic or as a medicine, it it all should be in a sustainable manner. It should happen in a sustainable manner, supporting not just the environment but also the society, also the communities which are working together. Where we have a very good example in Western Australian sandalwood, working with the Aboriginal communities. So, in the final remarks, to wind up my long talk, is it's a rare community with a lot of uses, and it's historically used, and it played a huge role in human civilization. A lot of innovation and entrepreneurship has taken place for sandalwood and also for sustainable supply. There are a lot of synthetic substitutes, biotechnology substitutes, and other plant substitutes. But the natural aroma, the real aroma of sandalwood would come from a hardwood distilled or extracted oil. So my final message, take home message for you is, don't worry, sandalwood is available. So there's what you have to see is the availability of sandalwood. And we have this problem, like a lot of them, comparing a plantation grown sandalwood to a age-old sandalwood, 100-year-old sandalwood tree distilled 25 years ago, or something like that. A well-matured sandalwood sample, people would compare with that. It's not going to be. We have to change with our taste, as we have changed with anything else. So there's enough sandalwood for you to use, especially in aromatherapy, perfumery, cosmetics. So we have to be aware of that. It is not all wild harvested. So what you have to do is you have to be really mindful where you source your sandalwood. So there are enough ethical suppliers, not just my employer, who are and not just Western Australia, who does a very good job and provide ethical sandalwood. So in this case, all the sustainable suppliers of sandalwood would join together and make the end users and the industry, cosmetic industry, the perfume industry, aromatherapy industry, educated that there's enough sandalwood available. But make sure where you buy, don't buy from the cheap sandalwood. If it is authentic and cheap, definitely would come from a very unethical source. So it's not the price, it's the quality as well as the sustainability which you have to look for. I would like to acknowledge these people and organizations for some of the data presented in this presentation, and also who has been, some of them have been pillars in my pillars of support in my sandalwood journey. I'll finish my presentation with this poem which I used to by heart as a child, which says about virtues of a gentleman. So comparing virtues of a gentleman to a log of sandalwood as you're facing more hardships. As sandalwood exits aroma, a good gentleman exits, shows his virtues. Thank you very much for listening to me, and hope you learned something about sandalwood and start using and start discussing about sustainable and quality sandalwood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Danny. We really appreciate your efforts here, and especially being flexible, being able to jump in and give the live presentation, particularly after already filming it, and being willing to work through some technical difficulties.
Yeah, so I have to thank you very much, and I have to apologize for all the very patient attendees that because I had to remind as well, because it's almost midnight in my time.
Yes.
So I was almost in a bit of a sleepy mood when you ask me to do the presentation.
No, yeah,
yeah.
Well, you're a good sport. We appreciate your flexibility there, and I really enjoyed everything that you presented there. Sandalwood has been a fascination for me for many years now, as you touched on, for the impact it's had on human history, the economics of the world too, medicine, flavor, fragrance, and also the environmental impacts. And it's just such a fascinating genus of tree. So many different aspects of it there. So I appreciate you touching on many of those things and sharing your experience and expertise with us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we did want to take a couple minutes and answer some questions.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah.
One of the first ones was about the plantations that have had decades now of growing in Western Australia. One specific question was about the species of sandalwood. Is it just album, or are there others that are being grown in these plantations?
The northern species is the what is planted most is Santalum album.
Mm-hmm.
But there were trials conducted by the Forest Products Commission of Western Australia on the Santalum austrocaledonicum as well as Santalum album from Timor. But most of the plantations, when you talk about the Quintus or Santanol, the two major companies growing sandalwood, are the Santalum album from South India, from Mysore region. Yeah.
I see. Okay, great. And you did mention too, of course, with the host trees, it's not just sandalwood being planted, but other species of trees there too. What's the most commonly used host tree, or I guess the most suitable for growing a healthy sandalwood tree?
I have to, before answering it, I have to thank all my forestry friends, because because what I've managed to, I've worked with them and learned these things very closely. So when they're in the nursery as pot hosts, there's a very, like a runner type of a tree, the herb what we grow as a pot host. Usually it's an Adenanthera, if my botany is correct. And you can use various types of pot host which gives nitrogen. And some of the species are more parasitic. Like as an example, Western Australian sandalwood is more parasitic than the Indian sandalwood. So you need a much more robust pot host. And then when you go to the plantation, the first few years, what we call as the primary host would be usually a fabaceae legume type of a tree of easy grow, fast growing tree, which is not going to stand sandalwood, like can't compete with sandalwood for many years. So within 2 to 3 years, they'll be that tree is gone. By that time, you need to have a long-term host, which is going to be with sandalwood for rest of its lifetime. So usually the secondary, what we call the primary hosts on the ground are sesbanias, or you can use um, uh, I'm not very sure it's called as albicea, but it's not the correct name in or epilibils. You can grow as the secondary when it grows on the ground. But in Australia, the most favorite is the is sesbania. And then once the trees grow, then it's a real challenge. Then you need to have a tree which suits that environment and the soil. So usually you can use a mix of native acacias or any other nitrogen fixing tree, large tree which is suited for that land. So sandalwood would grow happily based on based on host tree.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And then one question that I've had, and again, this is more for a forestry agent, as you said, you're a chemist here, or working, that's your emphasis and focus. But where the hemiparasitic side of the sandalwood trees is absorbing those nutrients, in particular nitrogen, has there been studies done on being able to add fertilizers or specific nutrients and making it so that the sandalwood trees are less dependent on a host? Or what comments can you have on that?
Sorry, and I lost with my. Sorry, could you please? Yeah.
Sure. My question is with the sandalwood trees needing to absorb a lot of nutrients from a host tree. Has there been any studies done on artificially providing that in a plantation setting, whether it's through fertilizers or other means of providing nutrients, so that the sandalwood trees are less dependent on a host because they're getting the nutrients they need from a secondary means, if you will?
There were some studies done on that. I'm not the person to explain it in detail, but a lot of forestry scientists have done these studies. What they found was like it's very expensive to do that. If you fertilize, because what you have to understand is this is a tree which is going to it's agroforestry when compared to other forest practices. It's an agroforestry practice, so we need to have a host tree which can provide all these nutrients. So the main challenge in sandalwood plantations is selecting the correct host tree. So if you could see, I know Professor Fox has done initial studies in 1975, and since then Dr. Ananthapadmanabh has done in India, and still even today, whenever my forestry colleagues, when they were given a new plot of land to grow sandalwood, they have to check, and it's an ever changing or ever learning process. I think you could fertilize it and let them grow without much depending upon the host trees. Theoretically, it is, but I think it's very expensive and impractical.
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you. Another question is in line with the forest stewardship certification. Can you comment on any of the plantations that are in Western Australia there related to the FSC program?
Now, for a company point of view, I would be answering that. Sorry, Aaron, but I would definitely check. And if there's a particular question, I could forward. But I know there were some issues with getting it forest stewardship certification. Um, FSC certification for sandalwood, because it's seen as a in a different point of view, because if you see FSC is mostly focused on like uh, timber and pulp industry. There were some issues, but I'm not the person uh, to answer, but I'm very happy to answer. I could see the answer from my good friend Dr. Julian is there. So Daniel, if you're listening, I'll try to convey this message to our compliance team and try to get back to you.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. So more of a chemistry question. Dr. Satyal asked about dimers being seen or produced in sandalwood oil production. He asked if that's related to overheating. Can you comment on that chemistry?
Correct. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's overheat, and it's we've seen these dimers coming with the storage of certain, especially with the specific sandalwood species. I've seen uh, like uh, like a stability issue, as well as as a distillation artifact.
Okay. Great. Another question I see on here is more, I think, for, I would say, more decorative or homegrown sandalwood. Do you know if the chemistry of the oil produced from, I guess, more of a homegrown sandalwood versus a wild-crafted, what the chemistry impact may be?
Yeah, of course. Because the wild trees, what we have to understand is when if someone is harvesting trees in the wild, they usually target the older trees. So in Pacific Islands and in India, except I'm saying Hawaii, it's going to be a different story, because you won't have much old wild trees left. But if in Hawaiian, Big Island and Western Australia, we have the um, privilege to harvest really old trees. So when you compare with the 15 or 20-year-old plantation tree to a wild tree, which is in Western Australia, we usually harvest trees over 60 years old, so 60 to 100 years old trees. So there's a huge difference.
Yeah,
In chemistry, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
Like to say very simply, it's like you have high bisabolol levels in Western Australian sandalwood, which is with the plantation trees, which is very good marker to identify a younger plantation tree from a mature tree.
I see. Yeah, interesting. One other question that I had too, strictly from a chemistry perspective as well. There's a lot of I guess philosophies or traditions out there about whether you remove the bark or the sapwood versus the hardwood. Taking sections of those different parts of the trees from a chemistry perspective, what differences do you see based off of the location of what you're distilling?
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. It's a very good question, because strangely, I didn't get the opportunity to do it on any other Pacific species. Like a few, I would say, few morphological parts. Not going very gradually. In Hawaii, I've done a few, but in Hawaiian trees. But in Santalum album, you don't see a huge variation as you go the ascending heartwood, or in the roots or the buds. But there is a slight difference because of the sapwood content, and also in Santalum album, you have what we call the secondary heartwood, or the growing heartwood is more. But in Santalum spicatum, it's a well established understanding that as you go as the ascending heartwood, the quality goes down. So the what we call the butt of the tree, or the stump of the tree, is the oldest part of the tree, which has the best quality oil. and then as it goes down to the roots as well as going up, the chemistry changes drastically. Yeah, it's very interesting to see how the chemistry changes as well.
Yes, definitely. And then, Daniel's question there too is, and maybe he's talking about specific species, but is the sapwood separated before distillation?
Yes,
is it
of
just
course. Yeah.
the heartwood?
Yeah. Just there are some practical difficulties in when you do in large scale to remove all the sapwood. So it's like as we know in Pacific Islands, in Vanuatu, and even in India, you have staff to sit down and carefully remove every bit of sapwood before you distill the and prepare the wood, and also the trees. Actually, soon after it's harvested, it's stored. Then the bark is removed. Then again it will be stored. Then the sapwood is removed, stored again. So by the time it get distilled, it will be like at least 1.5 years from the day of harvest, which doesn't happen, which is not possible in plantation scenario. So when you have a little bit of sapwood, it does affect the quality.
Good. Well, thank you again, Danny. I really appreciate all the information and being willing to share on Research Aromatica today. Unless there's any final words on your side, just a big thank you again from everybody on our side. And
thank you very much, Aaron and team, especially Prabodh, and also in the technical side, Olivia and Ross has done a wonderful job. So I'm really happy to do this with you, with your team, which I've been working for the past few years, so past 5 to 6 years. So it's a great opportunity, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Yeah.
Definitely, we look forward to
and
the
also,
future.
I'm really happy to see many familiar names. Unfortunately, not familiar faces, and in this scenario, but a lot of familiar names here, and in the essential oil industry as well as in the sandalwood specifically, to see and join, and also a few of my former classmates from India has joined as well. So really thankful for them as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Danny, and thank you everyone for your participation, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye bye.